Hey, welcome to our latest conversation. We're three Black Pratt grads. My name is Kenneth Nelson. I'm here with my very good friends Mark Skinner and Greg Clayhorn, all photography graduates from Pratt Institute in Brooklyn. Today, we're going to be discussing our perspective on project based storytelling in photography, specifically image based stories as well as single image stories. The essence of our conversation is to explore whether a picture is truly worth 1,000 words, with comments on whether single images can tell a story as well as a series of images can. Uh, what let's see, what it is. What is it that a photographer wants to do when they show a photo, whether in galleries, websites, or social media? Do they want to give you a story, or just a visual image that is just a cute image? To get the ball rolling, I figured to begin with understanding what a story is. And I found two, um, let's see, two definitions of the word story. And one definition is from one definition is from Cambridge Dictionary online, and it is a story is a description, either true or imagined, of a connected series of events. And Merriam-Webster defines it as an account of incidents or events, a statement regarding the facts pertinent to a situation in question. With that in mind, I will bring it over to Mark to begin discussions on storytelling using images. Mark?
One of the things that I find in the work that I do is a certain level of diversity. And we can start with this image. You guys have probably heard me talk a lot about the fact that I did a lot of weddings. And so I figured one of the best ways to talk about story would be to just show you a few photos from separate uh, events or weddings that kind of tell a story or a part of a story. Now, when you look at this photo, most people will say, oh my goodness, these are the bridesmaids at a wedding. That's exactly what it is, but it's not the whole story. It only tells part of the story. And the question is, can a photo tell an entire story? I think a photograph can tell an entire story, but it depends on the scope of the story. It depends on how much of that story you intend to tell in each photograph. And in this particular photograph, because it was part of a larger group of photographs, I just wanted to get some of the ambiance of the ceremony that was going on. This is what the bridesmaids' dresses looked like, as well as the flowers. And it was a nifty composition. You got a sense of how close everyone really was. This is an informal photo. If you go to the next photo,
nifty what you were going for.
Yeah, that's basically it. It was just really sort of a what they would call in a catalog world an insert photo. When you take photos for a wedding, you think of them as a bigger project. Sometimes it's an album, sometimes it's a web page, and these are photos that are. This is a photo that is just one of many. We've talked about the ring, the pocket squares for the groom, or if there is a groom. And what you'll find is that there are all these little bits and pieces to a wedding that you'll want to put together for the bigger, larger story. And in this case, the only inkling of the story is that there are three bridesmaids with three flowers. That's really about it. Go to the next one. This couple was photographed. This isn't a wedding, but this is an engagement photo. And what I liked about this one for this particular discussion is that you can't tell what the purpose is of this. You just see there are two people. They're probably very close, but you can't tell if this is a wedded couple or an unwedded couple. But you just know it's a portrait. And there are sort of vague references with the Gothic architecture to some sort of spirituality. But that's really about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so this one is not really the story of how they met, did they get married, anything like that. It just tells you a very small story, which is these two people know each other and they're very close. But it's insufficient to really give you everything, but it could be just a portrait on a mantle or on a web page or in someone's album. And if you go to the third photo,
It looks kind of editorial, though. I mean,
well, that's the style of wedding photography and engagement photography I do. It does tend to be very very editorial.
okay, all right.
And if you go to the third photo, most people would say because they're very well dressed, they're in a park, and there's a Rolls Royce limousine behind them. Most likely, this is a wedding photo. We're culturally aware enough as adults to understand that this is a wedding photo. And if it's the only wedding photo that they have, it would be sufficient for us to understand that these two individuals just got married. It would not necessarily be sufficient for them to tell their wedding story, but it does tell everyone who sees this one photo, oh, they got married and they had a really wonderful ride to the park, and they're elegant and they're sophisticated and all the things that go along with that.
Looks
And
like
then
the
those are,
limo driver kicked him out and they put him out on a bench. They're waiting for an Uber.
well, there's no, is the driver there? I don't think the driver's in that picture.
Yeah, I
It
would,
looked
I
like
would, I would just ask the question. So, if an alien came down from outer space and took a look at this image,
and
what
they
would
do.
what would they think of this image? Right? Given that they don't have any context of
No context.
no context of marriage or weddings or anything like that, just an image.
I think
What
they would say
they
these two individuals are very. I would say that whether they have anything about, no, they'd say these two individuals are definitely close.
uh-huh,
And I think if they have any sensibility of what we as human beings understand to be affection, they're affectionate, and we could say that they're very, very close.
uh-huh,
If they don't have any cultural awareness of what the attire
uh-huh,
means,
mm,
then I would say just looking at the setting, they're alone and it's just the two of them.
mm,
So at the very least, it's far more romantic than the previous photo that is in the arches.
yeah. And I think there's a certain level of not necessarily ownership, but association because you've included the car in the background, or the car is included in the background. So the
Mhm.
relationship from the person to the car is understood that there's something between them and the car that makes them together,
Hmm.
Right,
So
right?
it's
So that
stylized. There's a
right.
level of
right, and that they
stylization.
belong there. Right,
They
and that
belong
those
there,
right,
or at least they have ownership of it.
right. The previous photo, you don't get a sense that these two necessarily belong in this space,
Right.
but you get a sense that the space is used to intimate some sort
Uh-huh.
of connection that is beyond the physical one.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
But the
I
the
guess
one the one before is like it's very casual. It's almost there's almost other than are they holding hands?
Yes, they are.
yes,
Okay. Yeah, because the other one that there's almost other than the hand holding, it seems a little too formal. Not quite intimate, if I could use that word. Like the one with the car, you could tell they're into each other. This one, it's almost like a catalog shot. This one, it's you can see that this they're into each other. There's something going on. It's a ceremonial shot. It's stylized. It alludes back to another time with the Richie Rich with the Rolls Royce and all of that. So there's a lot going on in this one
hmm
where like the one previous to that, it's just kind of formal and it's not that intimate. So I'm not sure what you were going for with the what do they call that?
well, as I mentioned
Engagement
before,
pictures.
right, as I
Engagement.
mentioned before, that's part of a larger project. So what I
Oh,
tried to do with these three photographs was to show you that there's a small part of a larger project, right, that really can't stand on its own.
Hmm.
A bigger part of a larger project that can stand on its own, but it may not necessarily illustrate all of the story. But it tells you some story. It tells you that they're close, but it
Yeah.
doesn't tell you all of their
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
And then the third one
Yeah.
really tells you everything you need to know, even if you're unaware of
Yeah.
our marriage ceremony.
Yeah. Yeah. True. That was true.
Right. And so even though this is part of a larger project as well, the idea here is that with this one photograph,
Yeah.
it's understandable that these two individuals are together at this time.
Yeah. Makes sense.
In, at least this time in the photo. So.
Yeah. Is that all you got?
That is all that I have, because that's really, how I talk about story with my photographs. I just say it really depends on the scope, and the idea is that when you're taking a photograph, and I talked earlier about having a deliverable.
Mm-hmm.
And with wedding photographs, you have to create a deliverable that says variety of things. Those are those inset photos that stand on their own, that don't necessarily say wedding, but couple. And then, it intimates a larger story is there. And just the wedding photo.
Yeah.
Because quite honestly, if anyone still puts photographs on the walls at work, I don't know if they do. But one could put the middle photograph on the wall without having everyone, oh, when did you get married? Is that old? Without all of that communication being required. They just know those two people are together, and that's just enough to observe who they are. Maybe before this event, maybe a long time after the event, but there's something about it that is more authentic in some ways than all of the pageantry that goes into creating a wedding experience. The wedding experience may be authentically how the individuals feel toward one another, and it's an expression of that. But as other people see them, the previous photograph does tend to resonate more for the other person. And the last thing I'll say is, and in that way, one must reckon the viewer when creating an image. You have to understand who your audience is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Did they ask for the black and white vintage look as opposed to the one before this where they were in color?
No, in this particular case, I felt that because the fenders of the car, it's a slightly older Rolls Royce, and that it had the elegant feel of a classic automobile. I felt that in this particular case, that treatment, complete with the faux filed negative carrier look, really lent to the illusion that this is a timeless. They could be anywhere from the early 20th century to now, and they would be a couple that was through the ages.
Yeah, it's a timeless photo, or at least
Right.
it can evoke from a time of the 1920s through now. Yeah, absolutely.
Right, and I think that's like a little. I think that's a newer Rolls than that, but you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, I get what you're getting at. Absolutely. Okay, with that, I'll take on my story or my stories. And what I want to do is I think I'll start with I didn't start with that, so
go back.
I'm going to start with this one.
Go ahead.
Okay. So how much, I guess the idea is to what does each individual person bring to a story that you're trying to convey in a single image? Basically, what I'm saying is I may see something as a photographer in this image, but I don't have any guarantees that anyone else who has not been in this situation before understands what is going on. All they know is the action that's taking place, but they don't understand the underlying rationale for what is taking place. And so for me, I'm sort of agreeing a little bit with Mark, saying that you can get a little bit of an image. So I don't think a picture is worth necessarily 1,000 words. I think it gives you some idea of what's going on. But unless you're in the situation or have been exposed to the situation, you just have no clue. So what one can possibly do is bring their own history, knowledge, and understanding of what's going on. But they won't have a direct understanding of why it's happening. So here, a person is just taking powder, pouring powder on some boards, but they have no context as to why they're doing it. So therefore, my assumption is, my theory behind this is that you can't quite, like Mark said, you can't quite get the whole picture within a single image. But if I take this image and start to develop a narrative and begin to show other images in a sequence to give you an idea, even though it may not give you the total rationale for what that first picture was. And again, these are in no particular order, right? So I can show you this image, and then it builds upon the other two images that I showed you. And then I can give you this image, and it further builds on the narrative. So therefore, a narrative starts to build up, and a story begins to unfold. And you begin to see atmosphere, dynamics, and things of that nature. You still may not understand what's going on in that first shot, the first image, but you get an association throughout the images that these are all related in some way and tell a story. And therefore, what happens is, as a photographer, I'm now guiding you into a narrative that tells you a little bit about what that first image is. That's why in some cases a lot of people think that, or a lot of people say that the first image of the story, it, is okay, but it's really the following images that solidify the story and maybe answer the questions of the first image. And so when I begin to show you these images, you begin to get an idea, but you still don't know the answer. But you know they're associated together because I'm telling you they're associated with a story or a narrative. And therefore that can be either engaged, or you can be satisfied as an observer, not really understanding why that first shot is there, but you have a better understanding as to the association with that and the dynamics of what's going on in these following images, even though it's not telling you literally what it's about.
So what you're talking about a lot is the contextualization of
Yeah.
your photos. How do you just show a single image or a multitude of images to convey the amount of the story that you want to tell?
Yeah. Absolutely. Right. Now, right. And what's the smallest amount of images that you think would convey a complete story based on the photographer and what they want to get across without, because in some cases, you want to direct your viewer to a specific context. You don't want them running on a tangent uh, because that's not the story you want to tell. The story you want to tell is within the context of where you're going with the imagery. And so the imagery sort of points you in that direction where you want to take them. The single image doesn't really do that well. So that's why I'm a proponent of, or at least I'm an advocate for saying that, again, a picture is worth 1,000 words, but it's not necessarily a coherent series of words. It can be broken up and chopped up. Yeah. So Greg, it's like saying ibidi 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 oopity abadi oop, right? Right.
Sabbity, sabbity, boobity, bibbity, wibbity,
Exactly.
shabbity, babbity.
Right.
That's what
Well,
I'd say to that.
I could say 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9, 14, 16, 24, 30. Right.
Oh
You're
my
not getting
God. I
sequence, but you're getting parts of a whole.
did not know you were into astrophysics, Mr.
I'm
Nelson.
not into astrophysics, but just my context and my thoughts on individual images telling a story versus a series of images telling a story. And, and again, I have another long-term project that I worked on that's a different story. This project is a long-term project too from the Coney Island House series
From the
and
what? Coney
Coney
Island
Island
House.
House
Okay.
series,
Which is a great series.
right?
Gosh, y'all
And,
folks out there in internet land, y'all need to look that up.
right,
Kenneth Nelson Photography. Wow, great stuff,
right.
man.
and and it's interesting because the story can be humanistic or the story can be non-humanistic. It could be inanimate. And I just think that's kind of interesting.
You gotta explain that. You can't get
Okay.
away with that.
So, right. So if I give you an image of a landscape, you have an image of a landscape, one image. But if I give
In
you
my head, or are you saying if you shoot an image of
if I photograph and show you an image of a landscape,
it? Okay.
whatever that landscape is in your head, it is what it is, and it gives you a little bit of a sense of what you feel about it. But if I begin to develop a series of images that give you other landscapes that tell a diversified series of events or series of images, that gives you a different context.
Right. Well, it depends on
Different story.
what's being communicated by the
Right.
images. I mean, if you have a series of desert photos, you do a lot of desert work, I know.
Right.
If you have a series of desert photos, there's something about the desert that you want to say. But if
Right.
you do the desert and then you go to a park and then you go to the ocean, then you go to
Right.
the landscape that's in the city dwelling,
Right. Yeah.
cityscape.
Yeah.
The question then becomes, well, what are you communicating
Yes.
by collecting these seemingly disparate images
Yeah.
and putting them together in a project?
Yes. Yes. Correct. Right. And depending on the level of understanding that any individual has who's viewing the images, they'll get it or they won't. And as a photographer, you have to sort of straddle that sort of understanding as to what percentage of your viewers might get it, when it's what percentage won't. How literal do you want to be in your story versus how uh, well how I can't find the word to
Is that a yin and yang that the dancer is pouring?
say again.
Is that yin and yang that the dancer is pouring ultimately?
It is. He's drawing a yin and yang
And
circle.
he's balanced. He's balanced while doing that.
Yeah, he's balanced while doing that. Just to give you an idea of and I'll give you the context of this image. Uh, Basically, he's pouring baby powder on the ground and what on the boardwalk, and that gives the dancers an easier ability to move across the boardwalk. That's what the baby powder is for, to make dancing easier.
Like a
Now,
soft shoe.
It's not. It's a soft shoe, but it's a lot. It makes you glide faster. It makes you glide so you don't stick
un-
and stick.
unlike having sand, since there's a lot of sand at the beach, he uses chalk.
Uh, yes, much finer, Greg.
No,
Right. Well, what you
at
get
beaches,
you get
of
that.
course.
Well, you get
The chalk
you
is
get the
much better.
sheen, so you can
Uh-huh.
moonwalk if need be.
You could moonwalk, absolutely. Or you couldn't really effectively moonwalk without it. You could try, and I think you could be successful depending on your shoes. But if you're wearing sneakers with a really gripping sole, then you'll need a little bit of help from baby powder in order to dance more smoothly across the floor.
Thank you.
Yeah. Are you a
I had no
dancer,
idea.
Mr. Nelson? Did you?
I'm a photographer, Greg.
How did no? But what drew you? What storytelling aspect of the dancing at Coney Island, because it's quite intense out there. What drew you to that? Was it the story? Was it the? I mean, because I don't recall you really delving into the dancers, but you captured some dynamic images of motion that is just so it's like
there
man.
are there are a couple of my history with music is, well, I love music, and in my
Any
earlier
kind of
younger
music?
incarnation, I was a sort of budding DJ. So that's where my music, where my love of music comes from. And in my older days, I began to do dance skating in the park in Central Park. So that's where the other part of the dancing part comes from. And I am much better dance skater than I am a dancer. So, uh,
Isn't dad skating even more difficult? Well, okay, maybe not more difficult because I'm not a roller skate guy because my ankles will not allow me to do it. But I'm kudos on you, man, for dance skating. Wow.
yeah, dance skating is easier for me than dancing freestyle. Yes,
Wow.
I feel clumsier dancing freestyle than I do dancing on skates.
Wow. That says a lot. You're a drummer too, so you have that whole coordination thing going.
Yeah,
Okay.
I love rhythm.
Okay. So again,
Okay.
what about the dancing at Coney Island attracted you? Because you did another series of the dance skaters in Central Park too. But
Yes,
the stills, the very different images.
yeah. Um, well, again, there's energy. There's it's funny because
Excuse
house music, and one of the things about house music is the word to describe the camaraderie within the house music community is love. You know,
Wow.
and that'll be the preeminent word and emotion that's used to uh, sort of speak to the dynamics of people within that community. And I, what I love about doing this is that the there's pure emotion in these images, and it's about people from various backgrounds, similar backgrounds, getting together and dancing their asses off, and having a great time doing it. Look at the face on this guy. This is Robert, and look at his face.
Oh,
You can, I
and you
mean,
know their names.
he
That's
is
cool,
having
cool, so cool.
wonderful, wonderful time.
Hmm.
Okay, well, I mean, these are exalting. There's, you know, to get this type of vibe from just you know,
me. Excuse me.
you'd have to be laughing at something,
Right,
hysterically.
but like you said, these people are really enjoying
Yeah,
exactly what's going on for themselves. They're having the time of their lives. They're
yeah,
just having a good time in the sun.
yeah, yeah. And most people just love dance anyway, whether they're viewing it or doing it. I mean, when you see dancers dancing, man, it's just, I don't know anyone who wouldn't be enthralled just by looking at them.
But this is my query or okay, me
Uh,
as
yes.
a photojournalist, I'll claim that monitor as a photojournalist. I love the way you've captured the images, but you didn't like interview them and say what brings you out here? Why are you doing this? You know their names, which is cool,
Yeah.
but you chose how far to go, and you chose where to stop.
Yeah. As a street
You know what I
shooter,
mean?
that's yeah. My whole thought process is never to intervene in what other people are doing. Always be the observer
Okay.
and admire the energy that's happening, understand what's going on, be enthusiastic with it and enthusiastic by it if you can. And almost everything I photograph, I am emotionally tied to, for the most part, for the good. There is some things that I can photograph that I'm emotionally tied to for other reasons that are not considered good, that are more anxiety filled. But yet I challenge myself to involve myself in that way.
Okay.
But
So
we're getting off the track. So
we're
let's
getting off track. Well, no, I was enjoying the um, you're
No,
saying you
good
try
work.
to
It's
stay
good work.
away, but you that old science edict that said just by putting the camera there you've changed the environment. But that's
yeah,
another
yeah,
story, another
right,
conversation.
right. And to be honest with you, again, when you're around dancers who are totally enthralled with what they're doing,
They're not there.
you're not there. You're not there.
Okay.
They're
Yeah.
so engrossed in their environment, what they're doing. Most of the time, they probably won't even see you.
Right.
And
Okay.
they know they're in public in that case. They
Yeah,
they know they're there.
Oh
They
yeah.
they they know people will be photographing them.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. I'm with that. Totally.
What you got, Greg?
Well, I just thought this was a great topic. More kudos. Project photography versus standalone photography. Yeah, because that always made me think of like, oh my gosh, what was his name? I always forget his name. Monet, his water lilies.
Hmm.
And the difference between photography versus painting. It's like now he could have, in a way, he did one image. but he did a bunch of them. You
Hmm.
know, did one tell the story any better than the other? Well, I mean, did he? I mean, it was just like like another conversation we had before. You know, I love light, and the same subject is going to look way different in morning light than noon light, or in haze, or in rain, or at night. You know, so I kind of enjoy that. So, like you were just saying, a lot of it is intent. You know, the photographer's intent, or like Mark was saying, the product. You know, is this for commercial use? Is this for memory, like the wedding pictures? Is this for editorial? Is it going to be, you know, 'cause you guys are commercial photographers? Is this for, you know, page one in the catalog, or where in the catalog is this gonna go? And you know, even then, you know, those editorial photographers do tell stories. You know, like Mark could have taken that both of those couples, thrown them in front of a painted background. Poof, there's your picture. But he chose to augment it with a limo, you know, a fall day, you know, the formal wear, and it changed the whole story, if you will.
Hmm.
Now,
Well, I mean,
products
that's what's
versus
there. It's not so much that I've augmented it. That limo, that bench, all of that existed in real life, and it's about
right.
positioning them in that scene to tell the story.
Well, yeah, but okay, they in filmmaking, because I got my master's in film, mise en scene. You know, you just shoot what's there. That Rolls Royces don't just kind of usually just show up. You know, just in, you know, like a Volkswagen or something. You should have chose a Volkswagen, but you know the there was editorial intent to have this particular vehicle that evoked a certain emotion, and you know, to build the structure of that image. That's all I'm saying. I mean, it's well done. It's a uh, it didn't just happen. That's what I'm saying. There was definitely a story to be told there. Like, but you know, going back to that project versus standalone, it depends on the intent. You know, I mean, do you want to? Okay, like okay, I hate to do it, but I have to do it because everybody loves National Geographic. As badass as those photographers are, one image, even that startled Afghani girl with her eyes, you know, she's scared out of her skull.
Right.
It could tell the whole story. It does tell a whole story, but not a whole story, a whole story. It, but the whole image is her destroyed town. Her, you know, all the rest of the images that they have in that sequence of that Nat Geo story that pull the whole thing, so that you know, mentally, physically, emotionally, you get the better scope of what it is, of what the story that they're trying to tell. So is it a thing of pure art, or is there a story to tell? Is there a, you know, dynamic editorial, or like you were saying, Ken, like a narrative? What is the narrative here?
Hmm.
Okay, this guy is putting chalk on the ground. It demands that you tell me why. You know,
Right.
it's like,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
what's going on? It's like, if that were the only picture, you
Uh-huh.
know, you'd go through life, you know, kind of. I wonder what that guy was putting the shelf on.
Yeah.
Okay, can you pull up a picture for me from the Nats page?
Give me a sec.
Yeah,
Uh,
sure, sure.
yeah.
Because I was thinking, you know, pure art, you know, where, you know, I hate to do it again, like, you know, Pollock and his paint swirls. You know, there was no intent other than to show the mixture of colors, the spatters, the, you know, and then he had his art speak about what it meant to him, and then when
You.
he expressed that,
Well,
go
what
ahead.
I guess what you're speaking to is the fine artist's desire to share the exploration with its viewer, with their
Yeah,
viewer. I mean,
for sure.
basically, with a commercial artist, you don't necessarily share the exploration because there's a function. You're not really paid to do the testing in that way and display
Right.
all the testing. With fine art, excuse me, with the fine artist, there is this sharing of the intellectual idea. You were saying,
Yeah.
Jasper Johns, you spread the paint, and you make a series of paintings, and so rather than one painting necessarily being pictorial, you're exploring certain ideas, and the audience gets to share that discovery with you.
Yeah.
Right.
Hey, Greg, what photo are
Yeah.
you talking about?
Like I loaded. Where are you? I'm also dilated. Also, I loaded into the Nats page. There's three
Uh-huh.
of them. The first one with the window frame.
Okay, what are the other two? Let
A
me
silhouette with a kid with the sun. Do you see that? It should be the top of the page. Let me
let me let
refresh my.
me refresh. I don't
Is
see it.
that no? Okay.
No.
Let me see if it'll.
Is it in the chat?
It's at the top of the Nats page. Oh wait, yeah, it doesn't look like they loaded. Oh, boo, boo hiss. I didn't want to. Interesting. Okay. Well, anyway, I wanted to talk about. Man, that's gonna make it. I could flip my phone around, but I don't want to do that. Let's see. Let me see if I can add a picture. Create photo video. There you go. Excuse me. Let me see. Boxer window. Loading it now. It's just a picture. I think you guys have seen it. It's we could not find any faces. I'm not asking you. Okay, I think I just loaded it to the page. Can you see if you can see it now? No? Okay,
No,
maybe it's no?
no.
Okay. All right, well, don't worry about it. It's click anywhere. Let's see. Because it seems like it's there.
I keep
But
refreshing and it's not there.
no? Okay,
Yeah.
so I just save. Wait, let me see if this will, I'm gonna add it, ask you to save it. Okay, try again. No? Okay.
No.
Anyway, I could hold the phone up so you could see the image. You want to see the image? There's a picture I took of I just came across. So we went to on a trip, and there was a window. Let me see if I can get to it. And it was I just got to Los Angeles, and I'm thinking, wow, okay, I've arrived. I'm about to take a long, long, long look at the beautiful Los Angeles skyline, right? But the drapes in my hotel room were closed. So I walked on over there and I opened my hotel room, and that's what I saw. Where's the phone? There it is.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And that by itself, for
It's a little
me,
bit fuzzy.
a little fuzzy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the idea is it still fuzzy?
Yeah, I get it. I remember seeing that image though. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, it's fuzzy, but yeah, the whole idea was I was disappointed. The view I get is a brick wall. If that doesn't come through, and it for me that was the whole story. There was no series that could have told that story any better. Um, and if there was a project, I don't know if that picture would have been able to, or a series of pictures would have been able to tell the story any better than that single image.
Well, that's what I meant by inanimate objects. And what does an inanimate object as an individual convey versus inanimate objects in a series conveying? Is it still a story if it's a continual series of inanimate objects versus people?
Huh.
So if you gave me another window with a different a
Different
series of
view.
a different view or a different curtains, then I would have a different context. So then I would start to see patterns. So once you begin to add an additional image, then 1 plus 1 is 2. Therefore, it's a sequence. So therefore, the sequence begins. The pattern begins. And
Right, but
so,
to get that kind of pattern, you really have to ensure that whatever the framework you've created, whatever those compositional cues are, you'd
uh,
have to replicate that and see the pattern in real life to articulate that. Oh, here's one with a brick wall. Here's one with a swimming pool. Here's one with a forest. Here's one with a row of cars. Whatever you're seeing through the idea of a window, you have to explore
yeah,
the idea of a window,
right.
Mhm.
and it would
So
have to have the same within a certain type of space.
yeah, but then that's basic storytelling again. The context is the story.
Right.
You know, in addition to your subject matter and um,
Right.
and
So
how they relate to. Go ahead.
right, because I think let's say you gave me a second image with another window, then that would tell me that your story is about windows,
Okay.
right? So it's a repeating pattern of something, right? So
Yeah.
that's going to be the main
Now,
thing. Depending on how much space your window occupies within each one, then that's going to tell me a different story. Whether it's going to be a transition where the window gets smaller in size or the window stays the size, that's going to tell me a different story. That's going to tell me a different narrative.
okay.
Right? And depending on what my understanding of that window is, I'll bring my own sensibilities to it in regard to the repeating pattern.
Okay. So, so it sounds like what we're kind of getting the consensus of is that a standalone is only that. A story is contextual, narratives, elements, subjection, etc.,
Well,
etc.
but a standalone image can be an entire story. I mean, that's kind of the idea of Bresson, that every photograph that you take with a small camera in the street can convey an entire story in that single image.
I'm,
Hmm.
yeah, well, I'm going to again put back, uh, yeah, I'm going to put back this description because I think this description of a story, a description either true or imagined of a connected series of events, right? Now, of course, you can sort of play around with the word events to replace the word events with pictures or what have you. So a description,
Or events happening within a single frame. That can
right,
happen too.
right, right. But I think, and I think Greg is on a point, and Mark, I think you've sort of confirmed it too, is that you can get a certain amount of information from an image to convey a story, but you can get much more from a series of images to give that story more oomph, for lack of a better word.
No, actually, oomph is a very good word. Now,
Yeah.
are you spelling it OMPH or
O
UUUMPH or
OOOOOMPH.
ah?
That's
So
the English spelling, is it not?
yeah, I think that's the English. It might be the old English spelling. We'd have to look into.
Oh man.
See, my
So
other thing as far as story to throw props to Photoville down there under used to be under the Brooklyn Bridge. They're moving it to Times Square, but their concept of storytelling, and then now it's a moving story, literally, because they've moved it from Brooklyn, greatest city on earth, to Midtown Manhattan. It storytelling. It's not just the images because it from a psychological, forgive me, point of view, it also says a lot about the shooter, the photographer.
Yeah. Hmm.
So I enjoyed Photoville, and I enjoy seeing how other people see the world, because it's like you could see that same old. That's why I was asking you about the people that you're photographing out there, Ken. It's like there was a old dude, just an old dude that I met in the Navy, and this guy turned out he was like a Pearl Harbor survivor. He was on the ship when it got hit. He almost drowned. All of these things, but you see him, he's just hunched over his walker, and he's trying to just get by.
Hmm.
So, does one picture tell his story? Nope, never could, never will. But you do the best you can with it. And I think editorial photography is just an amazing medium, and I think it needs to keep doing what it's doing.
Yeah.
One last thing, not to belabor it or go too far left, but Joseph Campbell, his hero's journey, where he would talk about, in order for it to be a really good story, you have to hit certain marks.
Hmm.
He's got to you've got to present the problem. The boardwalk in Coney Island is kind of sticky on the speakers, so you need to, so you have to, get a bunch of friends together, create a, face the enemy, and then create, and then you come back and you've become different in the journey of it. So,
Hmm.
um, man,
That's
I
in the
mean, I
that's
think
in the West though. In the West,
only in
you're
the West.
right. In the West, it's transcendence, and
Ah,
then you return with the elixir. In the East, you transcend, like Sith Arthur, and you don't return. It's just going from one level to another, and that's your entire story. So
ah,
Western culture tends to have stories where people go, they transcend, they go to a supernatural world, and then they return to
Hmm.
the normal world using their new tools to
okay,
save themselves, save the day, save whomever they need or whatever they need to do.
okay. And the Eastern,
And the Eastern tends to just transcend. It's the story is about going from point A to point B more often than not, and not
okay.
necessarily returning to the old world. Your journey is completely you're changed, you're transformed.
You yourself are transformed rather than to. Okay, all right. But yeah, and I think I strongly believe that both the standalone and for what it is, and this editorial series of images um, tell their story. And I enjoy both. So project versus standalone, I don't think they're kind of opposing. They are who they are, and they do what they do. If they're done well, bravo. That's all
Yeah.
I got.
Yeah. And I'm not going to hold this much too longer, but I just wanted to sort of give us a little history of the single image, because when we think about the history of photography, the first photograph that we know of that has been permanently fixed is Joseph Nicephore Niepce's, image through a window, and the history, or at least what is the relevance, or what was his intent for that particular image. Was it to tell a story, or was it to depict something without necessarily the telling a story? Because it was about science and not really about visualization.
Mm,
It was more about science. So if we use the historical context of photography, then that's an argument to that could be had that says it's less of a story than we want. But I guess with age comes wisdom,
Well,
and
you're getting at the idea that a photographic story is an imposition onto the reality of the image. I mean, the image has certain. If you take a photograph of a cup on a table, you're you know you're imposing your feelings about how that cup
mm,
rests on the table in
right,
the story that you
yeah,
tell.
yeah,
right.
yeah,
But it's also certain graphic, I would say laws, but graphic design compositional things too. That if you're going to do a standalone image, it should be tight. It should have your leading lines. It should have your dominant and subdominant. And all of those elements are just as, valid as a series of images that may not be as well composed, but as a family of images tells a better picture or as good a picture as the well composed one.
Agreed.
So they're both. I'm just, yeah.
I hear you.
Okay. And closing it out, Mark, you have anything to close it out with?
No, this has been a fun conversation. I'm glad we were able to get through this very quickly and with a lot of real insights. And it was just great to talk to you guys about this.
Hey, Greg, you?
Man, I just, I don't think a lot, daily is like, oh man, oh crap. Ooh. But a lot of it kind of still seeps back in when I think about certain imagery, and I'll never forget my foreman space class in ceramics, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm not going to do well in this. And his project was, I want you to build the air in the room, and I almost fell off my chair because I'm like, what? How do you? But the exercise of it
Mm-hmm.
made me see stuff differently, and it, like this, can you tell the can you tell the story in one image? Sure. But what can you tell with a series of images? So hey, I'm glad we had this conversation. This is one of the best ones we've had, I feel, and I'm looking forward to the next one. Like that editor told me, let's just keep shooting.
So, if the viewers out there have held on until now, if you have any particular thoughts about the single image versus the multiple image story, leave us a comment and we'll respond to it. With that, we'll see you on our next one shortly. Take care.